Good evening, everyone. It's a great honor to be here. I feel very kind of at home because typically when I travel, I have a Canadian accent because I grew up in Canada, and most people are like, that sounds strange, but when I hear Peter talk, he sounds strange to me. And then I realize what I sound to everybody. But then there's this problem that I have a Canadian accent, but I spend a lot of time down in the South, in Texas, Alabama, and Tennessee, so I picked up a little bit of a Southern drawl and twang. And so when I travel and speak, people are wondering, how can a Southerner sound like a redneck? And he's from Canada. This doesn't make sense. And so I like to consider my accent the labradoodle of accents. The perfect combination. If we could all speak in a certain way, that's how we would all sound. Canadian Southern. I also realized this evening that I needed to rewrite my introduction or my biography because it really sounds like I don't work. Essentially, I climb mountains, I hike, I play tennis, I play chess, and people are wondering, do I do any ministry at all? I don't, but that's all right. I just realized that I need to rewrite that. In 2010, the first iPhone appeared with a front-facing camera. Now, they thought that people were going to use it for video chat, that you could talk to your in-laws from long distances, so you didn't have to see them as much. It was for FaceTime, but that's not what people used it for. They started using it for selfies. And in 2014, they recorded on the average day there was 93 billion selfies taken a day. 93, not million, billion selfies a day were being taken in 2014. Now we know in 2018 it's 93 billion in one because of Peter. But we live in a society of you. You. You have to be a better you to stand among all the other yous that are surrounding you, and you have to look perfect in that selfie moment. Because the world is fixated on itself. And you learned in our culture that if you were going to stand out among all the yous, you had to make sure that you were wittier, that you were better looking, that the light was just perfect as you were sitting there eating your healthy breakfast in a nice vacation spot. Because we wanted to picture ourselves in a sense of perfectionism. Because our young people, and you learned that when you mess up today, everybody knows it because of social media. Think about our leaders. When they mess up, everybody talks about it. It goes on Facebook, it goes on Twitter. Everybody debates about what is happening. And so you learned, unless you're perfect, and if you make a mistake, you're going to be shamed. So we have created a culture of you that has to filter everything through the lens of perfection. And it's causing our people to be stressed out. It's sapping the joy from our society because we know certain things. We're not perfect people. That we can't live up to these images that we want to portray online. That we don't really measure up to a selfie culture. It starts with David. And before we think that, oh, it's a modern phenomenon, that people are causing themselves because of this perfectionism, because of this selfie culture, that a lot of people find themselves discontented, they find themselves anxious, they find themselves depressed, they feel like they never measure up, and we sit back and think, oh, it's because of today. No, people have struggled with sadness and sorrow and depression for centuries. Look at David in Psalm chapter 5, verse 1 to 2. We're going to look at this psalm and we're going to see how he processes life through two filters, and ultimately through those filters he finds a place of joy. But it begins in sadness. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my groaning. Give attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God, for you do I pray. David is sitting here in this psalm, and he is groaning in his spirit. He finds this sadness. And in our world and in the church, we usually look at sadness, or we look at depression through two lenses. We think about one is, if you are depressed, you just need to get over it. Just, find some joy. Put a smile on your face and all will be wonderful. The other approach is, you have some sadness, take some pills. If you feel a little sad or down, just take some pills and it will all go away. I want to talk about average Christians today. Not the people who, no matter how great the day is, they find a reason to complain and be sad. I'm not talking about those Christians. I can't do much about those Christians. And there's some people that do have some chemical imbalances and they need some help. And that's a healthy thing to get. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you, the mediocre joy Christians, the average joy Christians, the ones that are kind of just in the middle. And I want to help you this evening to find joy through this psalm, that we will find joy as David has found joy. Because when we talk about this great, oh, be happy, sometimes it just doesn't work. So I want to give you real solutions. Look what it says here in Proverbs 25:20. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day, and like vinegar on soda. So I have this bowl here, and I have this vinegar, and I have this soda. Now, you know what's so wonderful about this? I have no clue what's going to happen. I preached this sermon in Castle Rock, and I sat back and I thought, I should put vinegar and soda together and see what happens. It's not my congregation's carpet that I have to clean. Somebody else is going to have to do that. I thought this is a great experiment. So let's see what happens. When it comes to joy, some people are joyful and they pour vinegar all on them and they douse them in sadness. Have you ever been around somebody like that? But then there's some people, you're having a bad day. You maybe have lost a loved one. Maybe your marriage is on the rocks. Maybe your kids are just driving you crazy. And then there's somebody that's always so sappy and sweet that finds every optimistic cloud in the sky. Oh, life's going to be just wonderful. That drives you crazy too, doesn't it? And then they pour it. Now, I have no clue. Nothing happens. Besides, it stinks. Do you know why nothing happens? It's baking soda, people. You need baking soda. Who failed 6th grade science? But that's what happens when it comes to joy. Some people want to steal our joy like vinegar, and some people don't want to be sorrowful with us and to grieve with us. So how do we find joy? Let's look at the first filter, the filter of loveliness. Look at Psalms 5, 4-7. For you are not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil may not dwell with you. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all evildoers. You destroy those who speak lies. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. But I, through the abundance of your steadfast love, will enter your house. I will bow down towards your holy temple in the fear of you. To find joy, humanity has two desires: to be loved and to be lovely. Loveliness is the desire for an upright character. Because what happens is that if you don't have the right motivations for what you're doing, and you may present yourself to society in one way, but if your heart is only doing it for popularity or for prestige or for people to think highly of you, you will never allow the joy of their praise and the joy of admiration to come into your heart. Because you know one thing for sure: you are a fake. To find joy, you have to find authenticity in why you do what you do. Now look at what David says about God. For God, who does not delight in wickedness. God is not somebody who wants the boastful. He hates evildoers. He destroys those who speak lies. He abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. Joy is found in your actions and in your attitudes. If your actions say one thing, but your attitude is different, no matter how much goodness you do in this world, it will never sink into your heart. Because we have to be lovely. We have to be good people, upright people, righteous people, people that are living according to our values and according to the truth. It's just like this bowl. If you are not lovely, no matter how much people try to pour into you joy, it will always just sink out. The reason being is you're porous. And so all the good things you may be doing that you think will bring you joy, if you are not in alignment with your attitude, in your alignment with your motivation, there will be no joy reached. You got to be authentic in your actions. Because loveliness is doing the right thing for the right reasons. And when you do that, joy comes. Now you think about, this is Lisa Brennan Jobs. And you have Steve Jobs, who is this world-famous CEO, world-famous inventor before he passed on. And people will esteem him and just hold him up in the highest value. But was he really that good of a man? This is a picture of his daughter. And when she was born, he wasn't even there. For years, he denied that this was even his child. They did a paternity test on him, and the likelihood of him being the father was 94.1%. He said there was 28% of the men in the world that could have been her dad. I think for how smart he was in design, he was terrible at math. He was so bad at math that his former girlfriend had to fight for child support even after it was proven that he was the father. He gave them $385 a month. Not $38,050 a month. $385 a month to support his child. But once he became a millionaire, he upped it to $500. You may get all the esteem in this world. People may say all types of good things about you. But if your actions don't come from the heart and in the right source, it will be meaningless and you will find no joy there. The second filter for us to find joy is the filter of realness. Look at Psalm 5:9. For there is no truth in their mouth. Their innermost self is destruction. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. There's people, and in our world, they will try to present themselves this glorious image of who they are. But it's hard. Unless you are a real you, you will never feel loved by those around you. Have you ever met people who are fake? There's no truth in their mouth. Their innermost self is destruction. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. These are people that are doing everything they can to try to get you to esteem them, to them like them. But the problem is, it's not a real them. And so they're trying to put on a show. They're trying to act like somebody they're not. But once again, they can't find joy. Because when you aren't being genuine with your friends and with your family and with your church family, no matter what people pour into you, you have created a protective seal around your heart, and you can't allow their praise to bring you joy. Because you know that what they're praising isn't real. There's no joy in praise when you're not praiseworthy. There's no love when you're not being lovely. And so you have to be a real individual, because when you have authentic connections, real relationships, all of a sudden you realize that you are vulnerable, and you allow yourself to make mistakes, not to be perfect. When you realize that I have confessed sin, when I have put myself out there, and you know what we find in the church? That we are still loved, flawed, sinful, mistaken, weak individuals. And when our churches love us in spite of ourselves, we find joy because people have accepted who we are. But as long as you're fake, you're never going to get that joy, because you know what they love is not you. It's like our kids. Do you know that if you praise your kids insincerely, it actually causes them to do worse in life? We live in a world where everybody has to praise everybody. You can't tell anybody the truth because they may get their feelings hurt. And so when the little Johnny runs around with the soccer ball and he totally misses that easy shot, we say, "Oh, that's pretty good. You tried hard." No, you missed it. The kid knows you're lying to him. He knows he didn't do well. He missed the shot. You know what happens when we praise people insincerely? They end up on American Idol. We have all seen that. You don't want your kids to be on the funny commercial on American Idols because somebody didn't tell them the truth. When you have authentic relationships in the church, that means that they love you for who you are and you love them for who they are. You find this rich, this nexus relationship throughout the congregation, and you feel loved. When you feel loved, you will feel joy. And when you allow yourself to expose your weaknesses, your faults, and your mistakes, and people still love you, you will find joy. But all over social media, all over our culture, we live in a world where you cover that up with an airbrush and you try to get the lighting right. Sometimes we don't need more lighting, more makeup, and more sets. We just need to be real and allow people to love that. We find joy in this. Here's what I want to give you some practical solutions. To find joy in life, you need to be loved and you need to be lovely. You need to be a good person and you need to be open with who you are so you can embrace being loved. You got to ask yourself some questions. Is this true? When you tell somebody something, is that really the way it happened? Or are you trying to make yourself look more important? Or are you trying to make yourself look like somebody that you're really not? When you maybe write on your Facebook profile for your 20th anniversary and that your husband knows every thought, understands every feeling, and is absolutely perfect and makes you breakfast in bed every single way and your eggs over easy because that's exactly how you like them. We know it's not true. Don't write that stuff. Nobody reads that stuff. We see through it because we know it's not true. That's not reality. You have to ask yourself, is this real? Is that your real life? When you post something and the only time you post is when you're in Hawaii standing on some beach and you're saying, every day. No, it's not every day. You live in Detroit and we know it snows. It's not real. And you're not going to find joy in the fake. You have to find joy in the real. And then ask yourself, is this loving? When you put something out there, is that going to build up your brother? Or are you just bragging? When you put something out there, how would somebody else view that? Is that going to bring somebody else joy? Or are you just showboating? Is this loving? Because David finds joy through the realness and through being lovely. But let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them ever sing for joy and spread your protection over them, that those who love your name may exalt in you. For you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with favor as with a shield. David finds joy because he knows God's real. God never fakes anything. He knows that if he is a man of integrity, of uprightness, that is a lovableness. But if he shows his weakness and he says that he has made mistakes and people still love him, he finds that he's loved in spite of himself. He reaps the blessing of the righteous Lord who covers him with favor as a shield. Some people put a protective boundary over their heart. Some people can't receive praise because they know it's not real. But when you find joy, God gives you that joy. God gives you that contentment because you're in alignment with Him. This is a picture from an Apple commercial. And you may have recalled this Apple commercial. It was some years ago when the AirPods first came out. And this is this scene where you have this girl and she's walking along. Of course, it's snowing. And she bumps into this guy. And then they do this magical type of dance scene. Now, in the commercial, they're trying to sell AirPods, but they're really selling connection. They're selling being loved and being lovely. Because imagine you meeting somebody and then there's just this embrace. But think through this commercial for a second. When did you ever meet anybody and could dance that well with them without practice? We're Church of Christ members. We can't dance. They want to sell connection, but they put headphones in their ears. They're trying to sell you, put these headphones in your ears and you will connect and have this magical moment with somebody. But when you have headphones on your ears, guess what happens? You're not hearing anybody. You're tuning out the world. And you will find only loneliness and sadness. But when you take the headphones out and you allow people in and you allow them to see you, you will find joy. You have an opportunity to respond to this message. We're going to offer the invitation. Maybe if we could pray for your joy. Maybe the invitation is you sitting back and thinking, am I presenting myself in a real way? Am I being lovely? And are you being loved by those around you and allowing them to love you? Or do you need to try to put on a presentation to the world that you know is not real? And maybe that's where you're struggling with finding joy. You can respond to this message as we stand and sing the invitation song.